Oh, it is every other month?
I've been doing every other month.
Okay. Thank you for the,
July is a weird month for all of us commission-wise because a lot of us take breaks in
of course.
July because of summer, so, but we did sort of talk about an every other month schedule for
Okay.
our meeting, so.
Thank you for the reminder and my apologies for missing the June meeting.
Still in every other month.
We're still in green.
I don't know, like, we meetings sort of every other month.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless something changes.
Yeah, yeah,
But
okay.
this is the green bean month.
This is green bean month, don't worry, I won't
The
forget
most
green
important
bean month.
Plant of the month.
Plant of the
I
month,
had to look it up.
green
I
bean.
had a panic attack for a minute, like, what are we growing this month? Oh no. Okay.
Well, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, we have four. Wednesday, August 10th. So I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented, or any comments on the agenda? Awesome. Any comments from the public on the agenda? No? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Excellent. Any opposed, like sign? All right, we got an agenda. Let's do this. All right, we have a roll call. I don't know what that's for. Okay, great. We adopted the agenda. Okay, did everyone have a chance to review the minutes, and were there any comments or questions on the minutes? If not, I could get a motion to.
Move the adoption of minutes.
Second. Excellent. Any comments on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Excellent. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. Unanimous. Thank you. All right, on to business. First item of business is to change the chair. Traditionally, when we have these joint commissions or joint committees, we rotate who oversees the committees at the administrative level and at the same time who sits in the chair seat from the county to the city and then back again. And so with that, we would be looking at potentially, I guess, our Commissioner Ward or Commissioner Duncan Walker, if we want to switch. Yeah.
Madam Chair, I move that we elect Commissioner Desmond Duncan Walker as chair.
Second.
She's going to be so thrilled. All those in
I think she's aware. But
yeah. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Like sign. All right, motion carries unanimously. We have a new chair. Since she isn't here, I'll stand in for her in the interim and continue managing the meeting. And when she gets here, I'll hand her the gavel. Okay, discussion of meeting schedule changes, including the 18-month term. So currently we meet we were meeting every month and then we moved it to every other month because we were finding that projects just don't move that quickly. And so there wasn't a lot of updates and it felt a little redundant to be meeting every month. So we could keep that scheduled every other month. We could go back to monthly. We could go to quarterly. There's lots of things that we could do. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments on the meeting frequency? No? Every other month? Okay, so keeping it at every other month. We also we were originally meeting in the evenings and we moved to daytime since all of us are professionals that work in this field and felt like this was part of our job responsibilities. Is everyone okay with continuing to have it during the day? And does this day still work? Do Wednesdays work for everyone? Yes, okay, so Wednesdays, daytime. Hopefully we can find a consistent time on Wednesdays that work and we'll keep those going. Our chair, I'm sure, will be the most important person to make sure it works in her schedule, but we'll get that together. It also says including the 18-month term sunset. So this committee is due to sunset in November. The idea of this committee was specifically around, well, it started with a motion that former Commissioner Gail Johnson and I made with regards to several projects, which are the structure under which this committee was basically created, because every time we had a joint meeting, there was lots of discussion about those issues. And so it was felt that essentially if we had a subcommittee that could discuss those issues, then it wouldn't take up so much of the joint meeting times, and then we could bring back, I guess, recommendations to our individual boards or to those joint meetings for consideration. I have to say, I haven't really seen this work that way, just anecdotally. I wonder how others feel or what others think, but I feel like we have really good discussions, and I think we're providing good input to our staff team so that they have an understanding of what our goals and desires are for the projects we've been working on. But I don't know what we think about the term. Yep. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I feel like most of the joint boards work similarly, that they're an opportunity for us to learn as commissioners and to hear proposals from staff and from the community. And then those things can go back to, we carry that information back to the board. So not necessarily with instruction and with direction, but it's an opportunity for us to be better informed and take that back. We're going to do what we do separately as boards. I mean, we have different missions, different ways of doing things, and it's, if we're going to meet every couple months and we're going to learn things, I think that's probably the best thing this board can do, rather than trying to take, let me say that the water board, which has now become climate and water board, and the previously the Grace Marketplace board, I haven't seen them function particularly well as policy making, but rather information gathering. So I feel like that's a good thing this board can continue to do.
So, Commissioner Dr. Walker, you were elected chair of this committee
Oh, while I was away.
while you were away.
Well, thank you.
So-
I do accept.
So I will pass the agenda. We are on discussion of the meeting schedule and changes and discussing the 18-month sunset in November of 2022.
Thank you very much.
And
And thank you to my colleagues for electing me to this committee that I do feel has a great deal of importance. I do want to apologize for my tardiness this morning, and let's jump right in. So discussion of meeting schedule changes, is that
yeah,
where we
so
are?
we discussed the idea of continuing to keep the meetings every other month and continuing to keep them on Wednesdays during the day as opposed to evening, as long as that worked with the chair's schedule. So that's kind of where we are right now. And then we were just discussing the 18-month term. I do have a comment and a response to Commissioner Ward. I agree with you. I think that this committee seemed to have, we designed it around the specific projects we were working on. I think each of those projects are projects that I think originally were envisioned, being the one that I did the motion, were envisioned to be collaborative projects. I think since then they've become more like the county has these projects and the city has these projects. And so I'm not sure that structuring this committee around those projects makes a lot of sense. So if we wanted to instead look at this committee as just food policy committee in general, and you all would bring projects you're working on that you have questions or need feedback on, vice versa, and we could discuss, like you said, we could be educated, we could get presentations from groups that are doing like what Vilma did when they were talking about the new grant that they got. Groups could come forward with projects they're working on, and we could sort of run it a little more like one of the other committees as opposed to project focused. I don't know how folks feel about that, but to me that seems like if we are going to expand the sunset day and not just sunset this committee, then I would say that would make sense to shift that focus. Otherwise, I would say the sunset is appropriate in November.
I have a question in reference to the extension. Are we going to go for another 18 months? Or are we going to go for 24 months? What is the will of the board?
I think that's a very good question. So because Commissioner Prizio was the one that brought this forward initially, can you kind of, and please excuse me because you may be being a bit redundant this morning since I missed the first piece of this. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the original intentions were? We do know obviously we've reached the sunset point, but had there been any discussion previously about when we arrived at this point that, you might want to extend for an additional certain amount of time?
Yeah. So, I mean, if I'm being frank, which you know I am, tend to be, so I'll just do that. We would bring forward food-based items at the joint meetings because it was a passion of mine and it's policy work that I'm doing, and I wanted to share it with the city since so much of it impacts your residents and the urban core. And additionally, it was a passion of former Commissioner Gail Johnson, and so she also would bring forward ideas and motions. And because of that, it ended up being a thing on the agenda regularly on our joint meetings. And it was taking up a lot of time, and so we decided we needed to have a subcommittee, essentially, to discuss those items and then be able to bring them back to our commissions, I guess, versus taking up time in the joint meeting. So that was what the point of this meeting. I never actually suggested this policy committee. Actually, Harvey did, because I think he was sick of the long discussions that were being had in the regular joint meetings. And so we ended up with this committee, and it was really, when we crafted the resolution, it was really focused on those specific projects that we were kind of trying to push, which was access for food access on the east side, namely the grocery store and the healthy market network, mapping and sort of cataloging what our food resources are in the community, which is well underway, and they're all on here. Sorry. So that's the Foodshed Map. Good food purchasing program. So that was an effort to try to get our institutions to have criteria, metrics, and verification around their purchasing decisions in food. We've made some progress on that, and the jail is actually working on that right now, which is really exciting. But I think there are opportunities there to continue working with our colleagues, and I think maybe we could ask for an update on the work that you've been doing, the research you've been doing at some point. And then the plan of the month was another project that former Commissioner Alford brought forward, and so she would give an update on that every month. So that was kind of where we were with that, but now what I just said was sort of like, I think we either need to move to a more general food policy committee type, where we're just hearing potential projects, bringing forward potential policy ideas, listening to community, getting education on issues, and connecting the dots to how food relates to a lot of our other priorities like climate and water and waste and things like that, which I think with things like the compost, we're starting to move in that direction anyway. But I don't think that has a sunset date. I mean, food is going to continue to be an important issue. So, I mean, but I do think it's worth it for us to have something so that we at least have this conversation. Like, is this committee working? Is it?
Absolutely. And so, is this committee working? I mean, and I think that's something that we need to be kind of frank and honest and earnest about. I know I came to it after its inception and had a somewhat brief stint. There are those of you who've been here a lot longer than I have, so I'm really interested in hearing kind of what the comprehensive idea, about where the committee is and where we see it going in the future. I can appreciate, Commissioner Prizia, your suggestion to kind of make it a little more general in terms of the way that it functions. But I'd like to hear from my colleagues about how we feel. Those of you, if we'd like to go down the line for anybody who wants to comment, how do you feel about the committee, and has it been successful up to this point, and what do you think? Should we continue moving forward?
So thank you for the opportunity. So I first arrived at the committee as really a member of the community, a resident of Alachua County that I knew little about what the city and the county was doing with regards to food. So from the perspective of just a committee member that happens to also sit on this board, it's been quite illuminating and really exciting to see all the plans that are underway. I think we are just now at the point where we are starting to gain momentum. I feel like all these months it's been developing ideas, developing, and we're just at the cusp that a lot of these are going to be implemented. And then given the rising prices in food specifically, I think food and housing are going to be the two top issues for all the members of the community in the near future. And we should very much consider extending the term limits for this board. And so we've been looking at good food and how to get good, nutritious foods available in areas where they're not currently available. Perhaps if we extend the term, we should be thinking about how to get good and as well as affordable food. Because if it's not affordable, this is for naught. Nobody will care.
Thank you so much for your comments. Commissioner Chestnut?
Well, I'm the newest.
I'm the newest member to the board, so this is my second meeting. So I think that I think it's an important committee in terms of food. Like we talked earlier, I guess, as a joint meeting about the grocery store, which in East Gainesville, which is like a food desert as it is now. So I thought that that was important, and the food sheds and stuff like that. I think that that's all important, and I think that the committee should be expanded, maybe to the for the next 48 months instead of 24, so that way we can really get it moving and making it a serious board to the city and to the county, so that we bring recommendations and we can hear from the community and address those issues that we have. And so I'm in very supportive of it, even though I'm the newest member. So
Thank you very much. Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So procedurally, so I agree with what you said, and what you said. I think it's an important thing for us to intentionally have conversations as commissioners about. Procedurally, we can't direct either commission to do anything. We can make recommendations. But more importantly, we as commissioners can learn from each other and from the community about food issues, and that makes us better prepared to go back to our respective commissions for direction, to develop policy. Again, every time we have a joint committee, we expect a little more out of it than is procedurally possible, because we can't make things happen at this level. We can make recommendations back, and we can learn. Even the idea of expanding the term of the committee is not a decision we can make. That has to be a decision, we can make a recommendation, but it has to be a decision of both boards. So I would say that I'd recommend 2 years, because that's, now that both commissions are on the same election schedule, then it kind of makes sense. I mean, it'll be 2 years before, after the commissions change in a few months here, a few weeks, it'll be 2 years before they change again. So there's an opportunity to get into a rhythm, I think. So I would like to hear from everybody else, but my recommendation would be 2 years as opposed to the other terms that we've discussed.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward. Commissioner Perzia?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think 2 years is a good time frame to get on that election cycle. I think that it is a little frustrating that we don't have more like opportunity to make impact. I guess I would like to see that if we're going to be learning and we're going to be hearing about projects and we're going to be hearing about things, that we would, if we're going to move in that direction, that we would be committed to like actually voting as a committee, and then the members of this board representing the vote of this committee to their boards. Because I think that that's one of the things that I've noticed is sort of in the other boards is sort of wanting, is like we'll have these discussions. We don't seem to really like do a lot of like, we do motions on things that come forward to us, but we aren't doing a lot of like, this is an issue that's important to our community. This board is taking a position on it, and then we're going to stand as a board and take it back to each of our boards and say like, hey, this is important, And so I guess I would love to see more of that in this process, so that we as a board are kind of an entity that's like thinking about these issues and contemplating them, and then bringing back, not necessarily funding recommendations, but like more policy type things. And if it's funding, then I guess we have to, then it's a little bit different. It's a little more like, how does that work? But those are my comments. I think 2 years is good. I think extending it to be more general or expanding it to be more general is good. And I guess I honestly would like to hear from staff too, because they're the ones who have to implement what we do and bring us back all that education. And so I would love to hear from them about what they think is valuable to have from us, because I do think that a lot of what these committees are for is to help provide guidance to staff in terms of, like what are our interests and direction in the community around food issues.
Thank you, Commissioner Perzia. Good morning.
Good morning. So in my role, I'm extension specialist and a researcher in community food systems. And so I feel like part of my role on this board is to help provide information and guidance based on research literature to staff. And my only concern about my serving in that role in this committee is meeting bi-monthly may prevent them from getting information they need in a timely fashion to keep things moving. And so I guess that's just an observation because I'm available anytime, via email and would be happy to communicate with staff to move things forward.
Well, thank you for that insight. And I think that's a very important point to make. Meeting bi-monthly could pose a bit of an issue for staff. It sounds to me like there is general consensus in terms of us extending this committee's roles and functions out to the 48-month period. The issue,
24.
24, sorry, thank you, 24-month period. But it sounds to me like now we probably need to discuss this issue of bi-monthly meeting. Is that enough? Originally, we were meeting once a
Originally, we
month.
were meeting monthly, but we were meeting on these specific projects, and these specific projects are just not moving that quickly. So it was sort of like the same conversations over and over and over. And so we decided to expand it so that give the staff more time to get more done and for, the community to kind of absorb what we were doing and then come back. But with the idea of it expanding more generally, we could still meet monthly because we'd be hearing a much broader scope of different projects and things that are going on. I still think bi-monthly works. I personally feel like we got a lot of meetings and a lot of committees, so.
Amen.
So I would still be in favor, I think, of the bi-monthly, but I could see what you're saying.
Well, and I'm not proposing meeting more than bi-monthly. I wouldn't want the information provision to only be bi-monthly, if that makes sense.
Right. And I think that's the nice thing is, like, as long as, I don't even know, I guess because it's Sunshine Board, if one of us gets the information, all of us should get the information. So as long as whatever you're sending to staff or they're questioning, like the other board members are copied on, I think it'd be great for them to have more regular communications with members of the board on issues that are relevant to their expertise.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know what you think.
So just a thought I'd like to share. I understand projects take time to implement, and some of these projects are really large and really ambitious that require an awful lot of staff time. But the members of the community need help now. Not in 2 years, not in 3 years. They need help now. And nothing is more important to people's everyday lives than food and housing. And so if meeting every 2 months works, that's fine. But I just don't want us to lose the sense of urgency. They need healthy food. They need affordable food. They need it now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Commissioner Ward, I saw your light.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I absolutely hear what you're saying. And I hear what you're saying. But I also know that the more often we meet and have staff sitting here listening to us, the less work staff can do. The worst thing we can do is keep them sitting here in a meeting. But we can discuss, and if there's action that must be taken, then it still has to go back to our boards. But they hear us, and giving them the ability to go out and do what's obvious is an important thing for us. I'm going to go ahead and move that we ask our respective boards to extend this through the end of 2024 and that we meet on a bi-monthly basis.
It's been moved and seconded that we extend our committee to 24 months and that we keep it at the bi-monthly meeting. Is all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, it looks like we are on to E3, filling 3 board vacancies. There's a recommendation that the Joint City-County Food System Policy Board hear staff presentation, discuss the process for filling remaining vacancies, and provide directions to staff. So who is going to lead us in this presentation. Carissa, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. Carissa Raskin, Assistant Director of Strategy Planning and Innovation at the City of Gainesville. So yes, we do have some vacancies on this committee, and now that we've decided to extend, I think this item is all the more relevant. And this discussion is really just around how we want to go about the process of filling those vacant seats. So if we could have the next slide, please. Wonderful. Thank you. So just as a reminder of what was put into the interlocal agreement that established this board, we have 2 members of each, the city commission as well as the county commission. We have 1 member from UF-IFAS. Oh, technology, sorry, I have a clicker. Thanks, Raul. We have 1 member from US-IFAS, and that's Dr. Campbell. We have also a member from Santa Fe College, and that's Dr. Vilma Fuentes. But then we never appointed 3 of the remaining members to the board. And so it was upon discussion of actually our very first meeting in August of 2021 that we added a few additional seats. And so the vacancies currently include a member of a rural agricultural area of Alachua County, 1 member to represent Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University, FAMU, and 1 member who is a resident of an urban area more within the city of Gainesville impacted by food insecurity. And so those are the 3 vacancies, which I just outlined for you. So we had a process of how we went about filling the positions for the UF-IFAS seat and the Santa Fe College seat, and that was discussed by the board. And what we did was we reached out to the administrators of each of those institutions and asked for recommendations from the administration as to who they would nominate, essentially. We got a few names, and then those names were brought to the board, and resumes were submitted, and the board accepted and approved and granted the positions to Dr. Campbell and Dr. Fuentes. And upon being approved, they became voting members of this board. And so a similar process is recommended for what we would do with FAMU. And so we're just, that's the recommendation, is that we would move in that way to reach out to administrators, ask for a few nominations, and then bring it back to the board for discussion and approval. In terms of the other representatives for rural and urban, previously it had been discussed how we would go about doing the nomination process, considering this was a joint board. One of the positions was more for the county, one of the positions was more for the city, but the chair of the board was the county, and so whose process to go through in terms of recruitment of members wasn't ever quite decided. And so I don't believe that there was anything posted for these positions. So what we would recommend is that we could use the city's process for posting positions for regular advisory boards, and that the county would create a description of what the vision is for the county representative, and that would be also, I guess, hosted on the county's website, but that we would strictly use the city's process for posting and advertising the position. Because the board is now chaired by the city, the recommendations would come in, and then we would present the board with those recommendations through that process. If we have 2 different channels for filling vacancies, then it would get confusing for community members and potentially very confusing for staff as to where we're supposed to be directing folks. And so we would utilize our city clerk's office to kind of manage the process going forward. So that is the recommendation. And some of the questions that are posed on this slide, we've already addressed in these previous items, so I don't think we necessarily need to discuss these. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Carissa. I know that I have a couple of questions, but I want to defer to my colleagues first.
Yeah,
Commissioner
Madam Chair.
Prizia?
I'm excited we're talking about this. When we first had all the discrepancies about how we were going to recruit and everything, and we also, I think, did some initial kind of feelers, and we kind of didn't have anybody bite. I think nobody knew what this committee really was at first, so it was hard to get some buy-in. But I'm excited to hear we're bringing this back. I like the idea of reaching out to FAMU directly the way that we did the others. I agree that the member of the urban area should be recruited through the city's process. I think that the member of the rural and agricultural should be recruited through the county process. And the reason is that our rural residents are subscribed to our newsletters, our website, are engaged through the county. And I think that they would end up getting some of that recruitment material that might go out. I mean, we could also push it out, but I think that there might be some like, why would we apply to a city board? Like, I think it'll get really confusing. And it is a joint board, so I don't think it's that difficult for us to then send the applications to you all for those seats. So I think we should work on the language and make sure the language is consistent of the description of the board, what it does and what the roles are, and make sure everyone's on board with those. But doing the recruitment process for the rural citizen through the county and the urban citizen through the city makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Commissioner Prizia. I see Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So how this will need to work is we will, of course, have to make recommendation to the two boards, each of which will need to have a motion at their meeting to direct staff, to their own staffs, to handle this process. And then I'm hearing that we want to bring those applications back to this board, correct? Is that, okay. I mean, that works. It's complicated.
That board's gonna have to vote on that person.
So it can,
That's why I was saying that if the county's process comes through us, then we would vote on the county representative.
Okay.
And the urban residents would come through you all, and you all would vote on the urban resident, and we would just be appointing, essentially. You would be appointing your urban representative, and we would be appointing the unincorporated area representative. I don't know that we need to use the word rural, but I think,
okay. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and move that we recommend to the Gainesville City Commission and the Board of Alachua County Commissioners to, for the Gainesville City Commission to advertise and choose a board member who is a resident of the city of Gainesville, and for the Board of Alachua County Commissioners to advertise and choose a board member who lives outside the city of Gainesville. Do you want to say that? Or?
well, I mean, right now it says one member who is a representative of the rural agricultural areas of Alachua County. And I guess I think that what the language, I don't think we paid enough attention to this language, but I think it was actually meant to be someone who represents the agricultural community, like someone who is a farmer or a producer, or if not a farmer or producer who works in the agricultural sector, maybe works in the distribution or aggregation.
So y'all hear that? Explain it to your board. You know, when you go. I would say that's the simplest thing to do.
Yeah, okay.
And then return those choices to this board as early as possible.
And then we would confirm them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my motion.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Ward. We have a motion on the floor. Before we take a vote, if you don't mind, I would like to, did I hear a question or the desire to make a comment here? I do. I want to just kind of go back because I need a point of clarity. I know I was just coming to the board and I was acquainting myself with its processes, its people, et cetera, and what the mission would be moving forward. And I will never, ever throw any shade on the great Florida A&M University. It is my mother's school, but mine is BCU, Bethune-Cookman. I see you, Wildcat. And so I'm just wondering how we settled on solely that as the only school that we might incorporate into this process, and if at this point in the game it might be possible to incorporate that institution as well?
They were chosen because they are the two land grant institutions. So
Okay.
they both have a mission of extension into the community and a focus on agricultural
both-
and food-based, both FAMU and the University of
Oh,
Florida.
okay, I got you.
So that's why those two institutions were
Okay.
chosen, because they're the land grant universities. I mean, I wouldn't have any problem with adding others, but we did also talk about the fact that a 7-member board is already kind of unwieldy in terms of scheduling, and if we got, because originally we were like, we should have a member from the city that does this, and a member from the city that's that, and but we realized that it would get to be such an unwieldy board that'd be really challenging, so we narrowed it back down.
Okay, okay.
But that's why FAMU, as opposed to any other historically black college or university.
Okay, well, I can understand that. I certainly don't want to complicate our ability to do business, et cetera, and I tend to agree in terms of making sure that we're able to keep the size of the board tight so that we can move things along. Was there any further discussion? Okay, well, we have some questions out from staff. Carissa?
Penn State is an HBCU.
Thank you, apologies. I just wanted to clarify, when we appointed the UF IFAS member and the Santa Fe College representative, that decision did not go back to our separate commissions. That decision was made by the board to adopt those members. And I would invite either our city attorney or maybe the county attorney to interpret the language. I want to make it easier for y'all, and if we don't have to go back to the separate commissions around that decision. We have the interlocal agreement here, but I just wanted, before we pass a motion and potentially complicate things for you.
So for the 3 vacancies, so, yeah. Okay, so this board can appoint the vacant seats. They do not need to go back to the separate commissions for
great.
approval.
Okay, thank you.
So then the applications would then be brought to this board and we would vote.
All right, thank you very much for that.
I'm comfortable with that.
You're comfortable with that?
But it does have to be directed by both boards because we're using their resources to advertise. So they don't have to vote, but they have to vote to do it. Because we're using the clerk's office resources.
Oh,
to
right,
do
so
that
just bring it up and commission comment that can we use staff resources to advertise this position, blah, blah, blah.
Right, yeah.
I mean, the board's already voted on the board, but I hear you. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you for that point of clarity, staff, and thank you for your comments there, Commissioner Ward. I did want to also add something to the point of Florida A&M. As we move forward, it sounds like they are going to be the university that we're using for this particular extension of the committee. I would like for us to consider potentially rotating that. I have not fully understood the importance of using solely a land grant organization, but I think in the interest of equity, inclusion, and fairness, perhaps since we're identifying, that HBCU, that we at least be able to open it up for the inclusion in the future of some others, Bethune-Cookman, Florida Memorial, whoever it is, I don't know if proximity has anything to do with the selection of Florida A&M because they're a little bit closer, obviously, than Florida Memorial, but Cookman is right there in Daytona. So, yeah.
The extension offices for the land grants have extension in every county in the state. So they actually have an affiliation with each county, which is why we picked FAMU. I'm totally down with saying a representative from an HBCU. The challenge is, do we have any other HBCUs that have affiliation with Alachua County and in the city of Gainesville? If we do, then that's great.
Yeah, well, you mean that's a land grant?
No, it doesn't have to be a land grant.
Okay.
It's just an HBCU. But if we have
Bethune-Cookman absolutely has affiliation with Alachua County.
so we could just say maybe we could modify the language to say a representative of an HBCU, and we could recruit from both, and then.
Okay.
I mean, it would help us probably to get applications, because I know, in particular, my colleagues at FAMU are really strapped, and they get a lot of requests, and they're really, really busy. So a lot of them are really struggle to have time for these kinds of committees, and so I think that is a great opportunity to open up the playing field.
Absolutely.
Is that something that we'd have to take this back to both our boards, but.
Well, I think, honestly, that's something that we need to be willing to do, because one thing that I don't ever want any of us to to wear the label of is not being inclusive of everybody that we can bring to the table. I don't want to create that kind of process where folks cannot be a part of this, institutions as well.
Would the maker of the
It should.
motion be willing to change it to a recruiting FAMU for this year and then, and you, Commissioner Duncan Walker, and then working with our reciprocal boards to change that to a representative of an HBCU for future?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. What does the agreement say?
It says FAMU right now.
Introduce myself. I'm Catherine Mokler, one of the city attorneys for the city of Gainesville. In order to change who constitutes the board, this joint agreement would need to be amended by and approved by both commissions.
Okay,
So I just wanted to clarify that.
So that needs to go back to,
Yes.
so I will add to the motion that we recommend to the constituent boards that we reconsider, that we amend the interlocal to include more than, that we amend the interlocal to call it, to instead of saying FAMU, we say HBCUs.
Yeah.
That comfortable?
Can I ask a question on that? Since we're doing that, since we're opening this up, I haven't brought it up, but I was also hoping we might be able to change number 4 to one member of the agricultural industry in Alachua County or the agricultural community of Alachua County, as opposed to just a rural ag representative, because I don't think that's very clear.
So that works for me, but understand that that's going to drag it out quite a lot more. If we want to get the,
No, I said we do this, and then
Yeah,
we bring
okay.
back to our boards
Gotcha.
that discussion
Okay.
for the next go-round of
Gotcha.
people. So we stick with this for this time, so we don't delay anything, but then we begin the conversation about an amendment so that by the next time we recruit people.
okay, and we've created a very unclear motion for your staff. Yeah, I will try to do that. So, number one, we're recommending to the city commission and the county commission that those two organizations direct staff to advertise a board member as discussed, as described, and that those applications be referred to this board.
So we nominate, the county and the city each nominate a member for this board, essentially.
Sure, yes. And second, that we reopen discussion of the interlocal with both commissions to change the description of the rural representative and open the HBCU component to be HBCUs and not specifically FAMU.
Yeah, and you're right, you were actually right, it's not nominate a member, it's just bring forward the applications,
Right.
because we.
So this
yeah,
board
you're right,
makes the choice.
Yep.
Okay.
okay.
All right, is that more clear, Madam Clerk?
What was the specific language you wanted to use to describe the rural agricultural?
One member who represents the agricultural community of Alachua County.
I will accept that. On the motion.
You're okay with
That's
that,
good.
yeah.
I just want to be totally clear.
If the other
And
board
you're the
members feel like that
second one,
works,
check. Yeah, okay.
it gives it a little more breadth.
Anything else we need to add to the motion? Yeah.
I was going to suggest potentially expanding the UF person beyond IFAS for the future, because a lot of the topics we're discussing here, people who work in public health and Health Street are doing a lot of really good work on, healthy food retail, food environment kinds of work.
Yep.
And so if we're changing the language to just have a UF representative that's focused on food issues, or not sure how you'd want to phrase that.
Strike IFAS language. Just you.
Just UF.
I mean, I'm just a suggestion.
That works for me.
And I'm not sure what currently the language reads for Santa Fe, but is that something that we want to make sure that we do also for Santa Fe? What does the language currently read for them?
Right now, it says one member who's a representative of Santa Fe College.
Okay. All right, how are we doing on that, Marie? We got it? Okay, so is everybody clear on what the motion is up here? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, colleagues. The next item up for discussion is E4, discussion of the board's scope and goals. We have a recommendation that we discuss the current scope and goals of the board, make adjustments to projects as needed, as well as provide direction regarding the organization that will lead each project. All right. So Anna has done a very good job in terms of kind of reminding us how we were formed, what the mission has been. Is there any desire to shift that, change that, amend that in any way amongst anybody up here? I think we've kind of identified, some very big things. We got a lot of heavy lifts in the next 24 months ahead, and I would agree that it's pretty much where it needs to be. There may be room for us to tweak things along the way, but right now, I think it's pretty good. Is there any discussion?
I mean, I guess I do think that that conversation we just had about the idea of being a little bit more general and because like things like the community compost and stuff ended up on this agenda, but it actually isn't in the scope of this committee to talk about things like compost or to talk about things beyond the grocery store or the healthy market regarding food access, like talking about food banks or their needs or talking about school lunch programs and their needs. Like none of that is in our scope currently. So I think if we want to be able to talk about those things more readily or be able to sort of like bring people in, I mean, we can just do it ad hoc and leave it the way that it is for now because these projects are plenty for the staff to like have their teeth in. And we just recommend topics as they're of interest to board members, then I'm okay with that because I think that that keeps us on track in terms of not having to completely amend an entire agreement and there's plenty to do. So I would be in favor of keeping it as is, but with the idea that board members could feel free, as we have been doing, sort of ad hoc, to bring forward new topics that they're interested in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Perzia. Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, speaking specifically to composting and food banks and that sort of thing, we should get at the next, in the interest of keeping it open and letting you all know what the city of Gainesville has already done, we should get a presentation regarding our zero waste ordinances that are now actual ordinances, they're not proposals, that include composting direction and include some direction to food waste, unused food going to food banks and a variety of things like that make an enormous difference and will be phased in over the next couple of years. So we should get at this committee just a brief update on what we actually passed at the Gainesville City Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Ward. Very good suggestion. I see another light right here, but nobody's sitting there. Did someone?
It was me because I don't have a light because I'm in your seat.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on this issue? All right. Well, it sounds like we're all in favor of leaving things as they are with the idea that we can bring things as needed, bring things forward as needed. All right. Thank you very much. Let us move on to community compost. We're now going to hear a presentation from staff and hold a discussion as necessary.
Well, there you go.
Thank you. There you go.
Michael, you want me to?
You go first and now
Okay.
kind of talk more specific.
So good morning, Madam Chair. Sean McClendon, Alachua County Economic Development and Food System Manager. Very pleased to be here. Congratulations on your appointment. Looking forward to your leadership. What I'll do is, I'm here to talk some dirt today. And as a preamble, I'll give some general context to what's going on with compost. With compost, it touches many systems. It's important for food systems. It's important for climate change initiatives. It's important for reducing water and artificial nutrient inputs into our community. So it touches a lot of different things, and it's integrated in, especially with the zero waste strategies that we have coming up. So this is a big institutional endeavor. It's not just about your backyard garden composting conversation. It is definitely part of it, but what we're dealing with is a system of of tonnage that's probably about 800 tons per day. That's almost 300,000 tons per year. And of that tonnage that's passing through the Alachua County Transfer Station every year, a little over 20% of that is compostable material. So that's a little over 63,000 tons a year of materials that's just going to a hole in the ground somewhere. It's important to note that there's a cost to that. The overall cost for all the solid waste system with the city and county, that can run anywhere around like $12 million a year between the both of us for managing that waste. So anything that we can do to reduce cost and save a valuable resource and put it to productive use is a net win in this community. We reduce cost and we save a valuable commodity. And so we talk a lot about that in terms of the circular economy of materials. And that's where our zero waste initiatives come from. So the county is very interested in this, but we're interested in it because we see the big flow of material through our transfer station. And so while we recognize definitely the need for entrepreneurial and smaller scale systems to take part, we also recognize that with that 800 tons of day that's moving through our system, we do need institutional solutions. And I'm very pleased to see that we have some of our private sector partners that have joined us today from Life Soils and Harvest Quest to talk about those opportunities. So if you go back to what the City and County Commission has adopted, and maybe we can go into greater detail at a future meeting when we talk about composting systems, one of those big rocks to get from here to there is we need a facility. We need programs to direct waste. We need educational initiatives to tell people why it needs to happen. And we need things that can first divert material at the very beginning before it even becomes food waste, so it gets into people's pantries. So there's a variety of institutional things that need to occur. But one of those big block things is even if we establish that the food compostable waste needs to be diverted and put it into our agreements with our solid waste haulers, we need to have some place to take it. And so Alachua County has been working with the city of Newberry on their environmental park that they have out west. As part of that development, they envision to have a composting operations. Life Soils is working with the city of Newberry right now. At the end of the day, and Madam Chair, if you would humor us, we'd like to invite Life Soils to come up and give a little bit more detail about their operations and what they are doing out there. But as a bit of a spoiler, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the facility that we have envisioned out there in the community could process around 100,000 cubic yards per year at peak production when it's up and running. So the idea that compostable material, food waste, other biological inputs that could come from the city of Gainesville, including things like biosolids as an input to the mix, that could all help to stabilize revenue streams for the composting operations that serves the community and begins to close the loop, taking these nutrients and putting them back onto agricultural properties, back onto soil, helping to preserve carbon in soil, helping to reduce water usage, and helping to keep nutrients here in the community. And with that, I'll answer any questions about at least the county's aspirations right now. And then I'd like to turn it over to Life Soils to answer any questions about the specifics of a larger institutional solution to composting.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Michael. Colleagues, are there any comments or any questions?
I have a quick one. When Life Soils is speaking, if they could talk quickly to if they're able to segregate compost that would contain biosolids versus not in order to have product that's available for farming communities that have food safety concerns versus those that might use it in their landscape where there's less food safety concerns, and sort of address the PFAS issue that's hot in the news right now. And if they do monitoring for that, I would really appreciate it.
And Madam Chair, just in partial response to that, our Environmental Protection Department is pending the release of a report on PFAS issues. So we should have some good guidance coming very soon from the Alachua County Environmental Protection Department on that very issue.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Michael. So can we hear from Life Soils at this point?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks so much. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today.
No problem. Good morning. I'm Darren Midlane with Life Soils. I'm the Chief Technical Officer. I've been involved in composting and organics recycling for 32 years. I supply a inoculant that actually speeds up decomposition of organic waste streams, and I'm involved in compost projects all across the country. Even have an operation in Western Australia. That's not the accent, by the way. I'm English originally. So yes, what we're doing here is a quick summary. We're working with the city of Newbury. There is a 100-acre parcel out there that's supposed to be a recycling park. As part of that footprint, we are trying to establish a compost operation out there. I guess the acquisition of that property is to close in the next month. We are in design phase right now for the compost operation. And I can address your comments on food waste and biosolids. We do treat them separately. We have other operations in the state already, several, which are proven to be very successful. So we have multiple permitted facilities. We supply about 140,000 tons of compost to agriculture right now, currently in the state. So it's very popular. We've done a lot of interesting and innovative things. So yes, PFAS is big in the news at the moment, which if you look at a lot of those articles are referring to incidences from the 1990s, early 2000s, when PFAS was much more widely used in products. A lot of those chemicals now have been withdrawn. There were some situations there where there was some industrial production using PFAS on a large scale. A lot of it comes from paper pulp and that kind of material where they make food packaging, pizza boxes, microwave popcorn wrappers, that kind of deal. It's in the carpet, it's in our fittings at home. We are exposed to it every day. It's in house dust, it's in my blood, it's in all of your blood. If you go in to get your blood tested right now, you'll find PFAS in there. So it's something that we created that is being phased out. So these stories that are being sensationalized in the press right now are basically highlighting, I guess, a 1 in a million opportunity where something went wrong, where water from a treatment process was going to a sewer, went to a wastewater plant, the PFAS ended up in the biosolids, got spread on dairy property or arable farms, and there was high concentrations of PFAS in the soil, which there are mechanisms in place that stop that these days. So yes, we are going to find PFAS. PFAS is in food waste also. So it's not something that you can avoid. It's in everything, basically. So as long as there are many states and organizations right now looking at thresholds for PFAS in drinking water standards as well as in compost and soil, and so they're varying all over the country. There isn't a significant answer to that question yet because the research is still being done. EPA is looking at it, the various states are looking at it. But I can tell you there are some interesting comparisons out there that products that we are exposed to in our households every day have far more PFAS than any compost ever will. There are also no data showing take-up of PFAS into the productive part of a plant. So it never makes it from the soil to the actual flower or the fruiting part of the plant. So there's no issue of it getting into food. So kind of there, we're kind of in a, we are a heavily regulated industry as far as composting. We're under federal and state regulations that we follow on a monthly basis. So anything that comes along, obviously, we'll adhere to it. But yes, the intent is to treat the two materials separately. We tend to go with yard waste, food waste, because we can gain organic certification for those types of products, so they can be used in USDA certified or OMRI certified operations for food production. I think that's an important aspect of this. We do have extremely marginal soils in Florida, very sandy, very poor. So the addition of compost is a game changer in most cases. We can amend the soil and make it productive, and we can grow a much wider range of crops on the same soil that won't sustain those crops now. So if a farmer is marginal, where you can only grow a certain specific crop, which might not be a really good cash crop. If we amend that soil, we can change that soil characteristic to make it more productive. So that's important. Notes, 1 second. Give you a bit more spec on this site. As I said, they're supposed to close on the property in the next month. We're in design phase. So the food waste receiving area, there's supposed to be, the county's looking at some food waste meat processing plant out there as well, which would generate, I guess, ground up bones and stuff like that, which is highly putrescible. It's all compostable. So the intent is the front end of the composting operation would be an enclosed building, basically concrete floor, concrete push walls, all enclosed. So food waste coming in, which will be contaminated with contamination, plastics, etc. It all goes through a machine which is called a Tiger. So it's a food waste depackaging. It separates the organics from the non-compostable material very cleanly. So that's all done inside and controlled. There is a retention time in that building, so putrescible materials get mixed with carbon like yard waste. They sit in a pile basically in that building for about a week. They get hot because of the bacterial activity, and the putrescible material breaks down to the point where it's not visible anymore. Then the material goes into a windrow, again under a roof, but outside, an open-sided building. So it's all kind of controlled in a way where, you know, we have a reputation of having a process and operations that do not create vectors and do not have odor. That's kind of our claim to fame. So that's why I'm involved in projects all over the country. So
That's a big claim to fame with compost.
yeah, sure. So we have some existing projects now, and if you get a chance, I would suggest there's a website called a1organics.com. They're a partner of mine in Colorado. So they take food waste from the city of Denver and the major institutions over there. And that product, there's a video on the front page which basically explains everything they do. So you can take that, look at that video. It's about 5 or 6 minutes long, but it gives you the whole story about what we do, basically. And that product there is converted into compost. It goes into bags and is basically sold back to the residents of Denver through the local Ace Hardware stores. So it's a really cool project. So I have several projects like that around the country. And so yeah, anything else? No? Let me see, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Do you all receive the material directly from the haulers? Like, are
Yes.
you sending organics trucks to?
Pretty much. I'm trying to
people contract?
determine, again, it all depends on the materials. I'm trying to gather more information because it's depending on how contaminated the food waste is when it's source separated. If it's going to a transfer station and it's pulled off a tipping floor, it could have a lot of plastic and hard plastic in it. So what is that percentage? I don't really want to haul all that to Newbury to separate all that trash to bring it
Move
all the way
back.
back
Yeah,
to go to
exactly.
a landfill somewhere. So is it better to do that at the site, or is it better to have a transfer station closer to the waste where it's generated and pre-treat it before we send it to the compost operation? So that's kind of up in the air right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
problem.
And Mr. Middling, would you remind us, or would you speak very clearly into the microphone and tell us again what that website was? A1 Organics, is that what it is?
Letter A1, number 1, organics.com.
Thank you very much.
It's just a really good video that I think kind of gives you just a really quick, brief overview. The company that made that video actually won an Emmy. So,
wow.
So it's pretty good video. But,
Thank you so much for that. I
no problem.
wanted to make sure that all of my colleagues, as well as myself, could hear that clearly, as also anybody who may be watching who might want to take a look at that as well. So thank you for that. And thank you for this information. Do we have any questions from anyone here?
So, thank you. Very
No problem.
fascinating. You mentioned that you are probably closing on the property in Newberry next month. And so, how long does it normally take for the new facility to become fully operational? That's one question. And then the
Yep.
second question is, how do you anticipate that impacting I'm thinking about jobs. Will you be needing to hire more people from our community? And if so,
Sure.
what kind of skills and knowledge are you looking for?
Yeah, basically, equipment operators mainly, on the employment side. So, and then with regards to the facility, how quickly, again, it can be pretty quick in some instances. The permitting phase is through the, FDEP, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, which is normally about a 6-month process typically. But that includes us submitting design drawings and everything else, stormwater control, so all that kind of stuff. Our intent is to put a roof structure over the actual compost pad. There are 2 alternatives there. If you don't have a roof, you have to contain all the water that lands on the pad and go into a retention area, retention pond. So that can get quite cumbersome as far as the acreage required to kind of hold that sort of water. It is adjacent to the wastewater plant in Newbury, so any stormwater or anything produced could go back to the wastewater plant for treatment, which is a great situation. So again, it depends on the economics of it. Is it cheaper to, in a lot of instances here with such heavy rainfall, it's often cheaper to put a roof up to, because any water coming off the roof is storm water as opposed to water that has to be treated or contained. So again, those dynamics will come into play as far as the design is concerned. I think the more simplistic it is, the quicker it will be to build, obviously. So if we get into a lot of buildings but that is the plan, to have two structures: an enclosed receiving area for protestables as they come in, and then a windrow operation, which potentially I think will be under roof. There are grants at play here, so it gives us a little more flexibility to be a little more creative and spend a little more money than we normally would. So that's interesting too, because the equipment that we utilize, particularly for food waste packaging, etc., is it's up there. You're $500,000-$700,000 for a machine to depackage food waste.
So are you 18 months from operation, 24 months from operation?
I would say hopefully by the end of next year, by the end of 2023.
Great.
Maybe sooner if we can simplify the design, but still encapsulate what we want to do. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that presentation, Life Soils, and thank you very much, Michael, for bringing them.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, Sean, I'm sorry.
I'm wearing it.
That's Michael.
We're all wearing masks these days. Did you have anything more to add, Sean, or you're good? Okay. Good morning, Michael Heimbach, Sustainability Manager, Public Works. I want to just take a few minutes this morning to talk to you about what the City of Gainesville is doing with food waste composting and some of the other options we're looking at as we move forward. And that also includes, some of the things that Life Soils will be doing. So, and if I just touch the right button, I'm sure we'll get going. There we go. So currently, 200 homes in Gainesville are receiving food waste collection curbside by a local community composter, Beaten Path. We received a grant from the USDA to do this. They're providing 75% of the funding. So essentially the program was to look at some issues relating to community composting, contamination, efficiency, and things like that. Community composting is happening in every community in the country, whether it's New York City or a rural area. But there's not a lot of municipal driven type programs. So we were looking at that, and so we're looking at the two things that really hinder composting, and that's contamination and the quality of the compost in the back end. So those are the main things we're looking at in that program, and we're just about through the year. It's through September, and so what we found is there's extremely low contamination levels. So why is that? So we think we've done good education, but also we think that yellow bucket that we have at the curb also makes a difference, and that it's not your typical garbage cart. And then we're getting about 8 pounds of food waste each week per unit. Beaten Path can't make enough compost to sell. However, the one thing that we're looking at was will the density and volume help them decrease their cost to provide the service? Equipment costs, gas costs, employment costs have affected that over the past couple of years. So that, at this time at least, is a no. Just to give you a little information on Beaten Path, they're an extremely small organization. They're located within the city limits of Gainesville. They had at least a couple of the goals of the city commission: local resilient economy, sustainability. They had one employee when we started with them. They've now got 3. I think they've added a 4th. But they are looking to expand, and they're looking to take advantage of the ordinances that we've passed. They're identifying additional properties. Currently, they're not processing meat. They're looking for a property that will allow them to process meat. And their long-term goals really are to focus on small businesses and maybe do some residential collection. So with that fact, we recognize that, providing food waste service to 28,000 homes and the multiple businesses and multifamily facilities here in the city, they're not the only solution. So we know that we need to look at other options that are available to us as we move forward. But as we do that, and just to give you a couple ideas of what we do plan to do within the next year with Beaten Path, we do want to add more units to our route, double the size of that, 200 units, and also want to move forward with adding city buildings to the program. So we've passed an ordinance. We want to set an example. We'll probably start with fire stations, since that's a lot of food generation there, and then we'll move to facilities like City Hall and other places that are generating a decent amount of food waste. So we recognize that we're going to have to contract in the future, as was mentioned earlier, about the delivering and processing of this material. So whether that's with a future curbside collection company or we contract that separately, we're currently thinking that something similar to the 20-gallon cart that some people use for solid waste here in town would be a way to collect it automatically, which would reduce cost. It would be a bigger truck. Transportation to Newberry, is a bit of a ways away. So we want to keep our options open as that occurs, and be able to either contract with whoever our current hauler is, or another hauler, whatever is in the best interest of the city. And it's the same thing for the commercial service. The way we have the system set up is a small company like Beaten Path can contract with a local restaurant and handle that waste. Life Soils could contract with a hauler to do that, or the city might be able to set up a program to address that. So we're keeping our options open, and we want as many people to be in the market to provide that service to everyone. And then we're also looking at things beyond composting. Solid waste has the zero waste goals. Also, GRU has net zero emission goals. So we recognize that there are some mutually beneficial synergies there. We've teamed up with GRU, and we've submitted a grant request with the Department of Energy to provide a feasibility study that looked at anaerobic digestion of food waste that would allow for the processing of the food waste and also the generation of biogas. Additionally, we received not a grant, but the Department of Energy's Natural Resource Energy Laboratory is providing 40 hours of free consulting to us. They're interested, seems like they're very interested in communities of our size and type where anaerobic digestion can be beneficial, because we have the urban area, and then we quickly can reach the agricultural areas. So they seem to be interested in working with communities like us on those sort of issues. And then at the back end, the digestate that comes out of that anaerobic digestion process would be available to composters to turn into compost. And as Commissioner Ward discussed earlier, food donation requirements are important to us, and Carissa and her team have been working very hard on that also. So we want to work with those food pantries and others to get that infrastructure that they need. Just as we don't have the infrastructure right now for food waste, we don't have the infrastructure for donations. So we are working hard to help them get the capacity and be able to get that food that's so desperately needed for hungry folks in our community. And just a summary, as Commissioner Ward mentioned, I'll be back to go more in depth. So the mandatory commercial food waste collection is set for June 1, 2023. Obviously, we'll need the infrastructure in place before we really start enforcing it, and it's but we will work to make that happen as quickly as possible. And then the residential multifamily food waste, we have a goal to have it fully phased in by 1/1 of 2025. And then our food diversion portion of the ordinance starts with grocery stores in June of 2023. And we're going to move to restaurants, caterers, food distributors, and manufacturers by June of 2024. So that's quite a bit of food that will be available in the community. And that's what I got. If you got any questions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. A lot of interesting information there. And some really exciting things going on. Commissioner Frizia, did I see your hand?
I have a question. Yeah, I have two questions actually. On the residential composting, or the commercial composting, it sounds like you're gonna have multiple options for people. Like they could go with beaten path, or they could go with a hauler. You've got the bins. I'm just trying to understand, would people have an option to choose how they get their stuff composted, or will it all go through the city's hauler? And then you all would contract with like a beaten path to do and a life soils and whoever to do the compost.
Right. Yeah. So as we worked through this, there were a lot of things that were unknown. So we recognize that there may be more than one venue to process this waste. So yes, it is currently open the way we have set up. So beaten path will continue to be able to operate, just as life soils will be able to acquire material. And if there's an anaerobic digester, they could reach their arrangements to handle that.
Okay, so people will be able to contact whoever, and then they'll just prove to you that they have that contract.
Right. It'll be a food collector registration program similar to what we have for recycling material.
Okay. And then my second question is on the slide that you just, do you mind just flipping back? The slide just before this one. Do you mind flipping your slide back?
Sorry. I got control.
Yeah. Okay, for the feeding the hungry, I guess, is it possible that we could hear a little more about this at our next meeting? Like what the process would be for them to be able to donate this? What the logistical, will they be responsible for getting that food to the hungry, packaging it and getting it to food banks, or will there be an entity that's contracted to pick this food up and package it for use? This is the work I do in the community, so for me it's particularly interesting, but I'm just interested in hearing how that food ends up in the hands of the hungry.
Yeah, great question. We don't have the answers to all of that. We know that there is some food donation going on, and we know that it is getting to the pantries, but there are multiple issues, and Chris, if I miss anything, pipe in. Getting that like hot food or prepared food, containerized and sent to a facility is a challenge right now. The cans and boxes are very easy to donate. So as we move forward, we are seeking solutions to that.
Yes.
So thank you. This is such exciting work, and I can't wait to see this all unfold in our community. I heard you are currently receiving 40 hours of, support from the federal government, and that's wonderful. You may want to consider looking at what other cities are doing in the country. I recently had the opportunity to visit Minneapolis and was just so amazed at all they're doing with their solid waste management, particularly in this area. And as I understand it, they implemented their first pilot program with composting in 2008, I believe it is, and then they just launched it, en masse in 2015 and 16, and now they've become one of the leaders in the country. And so cities like Washington, Boston, New York are borrowing from them. So you may already know this.
Yeah, Washington and New York. New York's going to start the largest collection program soon, so we'll be watching that.
But I know Minneapolis has been highlighted also in the media, their willingness to share their experience with others. So I look forward to seeing everything that you'll do.
Yeah, and I would mention from the previous discussion, one of the things that's really making a difference in this industry is the decontamination machinery that's been developed, and Life Soil's commitment to purchase that is important. So we're excited about that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fuentes, for your question. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Heimbach, for the presentation there. There are hours, many hours of committee meeting video available that have, and backup that have all this information on them. The Zero Waste Subcommittee met for about 18 months, I think, at least 12, I think it was 18 months, before we passed these ordinances. There's a lot of information and backup for those, and that's all available. I'd encourage everyone to take a look so that we can get the information into the community. We are in the process of doing that and trying to answer the questions. Some of this is trial and error. You know, what works for our community? What are we going to end up postponing? What do we have to wait for the market to catch up on? With the understanding that the market is unlikely to do things without regulation pushing it in that direction. So that's the intent of this, is let's create the push, and the community and the market will catch up to that. So anyway, thank you for this. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much. Any more comments or questions from my colleagues? No? All right, well, with that, let's move right along to our Good Food Purchasing Program update.
Madam Chair, Sean McClendon again, Alachua County. So I believe the cone of silence has been lifted. So the Alachua County Sheriff's Office through the jail service is going to be the first, at least, Alachua County related Board of County Commissioner entity outside of the Alachua County School Board to require that good food purchasing standards be enacted. And again, this body has heard about good food purchasing standards and all the requirements and the metrics required, and then reporting back again that we're actually meeting our objectives. So those requirements were folded into the request for food services at the Alachua County Jail. We had 2 submitters. They've been evaluated, and right now the Sheriff's Office in the middle of negotiations. So we're very excited about the implementation now of the Good Food Purchasing Program. That should be effective as of October 1 of this year. It's meaningful for Alachua County, Madam Chair, because what this now means is that the county can go back to our institutional colleagues and our friends and say, we have done this and we would like you very much to consider it as well. It's good for nutrition, for who you're serving in your communities, but it's also good for our local economy here. It's good for the environment. So
well, thank you.
Thank you.
That is very exciting. So I'm curious, how does it work? I know that we talked about it before. So how does this procurement process actually work from A to Z? Can you just give us kind of a 30,000-foot overview?
So it's separate from the procurement process itself. Was the jail needed a new food service vendor. It was just that time of year, and it happened to coincide with the county being very interested in saying, how could we implement this and where could we most effectively implement it? The Board of County Commissioners themselves, they don't really procure enough food, much like the city of Gainesville. Our food spend itself is minuscule comparatively to the Alachua County Jail, which is, all things together is pushing to about $1 million a year in terms of food costs. But the Good Food Purchasing System, considering that as an overlay of objectives and requirements for reporting, for transparency, most importantly for transparency. You say you're going to have certain outcomes and a range of options, and then you report back again and try to do better over time. And I think that the most important thing to keep in mind is that when you do an audit of what is actually coming from local sources and how nutritious is the food and are there animal ethics involved with it and what are the environmental considerations of the food, no one comes out scoring well just because the food system is our food system. But this is that watershed moment to begin to transform it and look at things to truly see where our food is coming from and what goes into it.
Right.
And with these incremental changes, I think we can much as what the Alachua County School Board has been able to achieve, really report back some exciting results that we can make progress and we can turn this great ship of state.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Is there anything from the city to report? No?
I don't think the city is doing anything on this one. We have
Okay.
separate leads on this.
Got you.
Yeah, Carissa Raskin, Assistant Director of Strategy Planning Innovation. We do not, as the city, have a large food procurement footprint, and so the way that we've orchestrated it with the Good Food Purchasing Program is with the county signing on, we would be a supporter of it, but in conversations with them, there wasn't any pledge that we were able to take because our food spend was too low. It was outside of the scope of kind of how they operate their program. So we definitely support, but we don't have any action to take as the city.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Carissa. Commissioner Prizzi, I see your hand.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to bring up that, like, I think the school district is on this, and I think that Kelly has before brought forward that, you know, COVID and the supply chain issues that we're seeing, the labor issues that we're seeing have been making good food purchasing really challenging for them. But they have continued to still make progress, and part of that was incorporating it into their bid process, and then ultimately adding that accountability into the contract. We're doing that with the jail as well. And we did initially, also the county did write letters to both the University of Florida, Santa Fe College, UF Health, and HCA, asking them to also participate in the Good Food Purchasing Program with their meal programs. The hospitals wrote back expressing some interest at one point. UF decided to go their own way, but they're in the middle of research, and so I was hoping that maybe our faculty member here, Ms. Campbell, Dr. Campbell, could share with us where they are with that. And I don't know that Santa Fe, I think, mainly does contracted out food service. They don't have their own food service, so it makes it a little more challenging as well. So I think we do have opportunities, I think, to continue to influence our partners. So I'm not going to make a motion today that we bring it back for another letter to those organizations, but I do think that in conversations you're having with those organizations and those entities, it's important to continue to share with them that we only pay attention to what we measure, and we can only report and make change in the things that we're measuring. And measurement and verification and transparency are critical to sustainability in our food system and making an impact for social justice, for nutrition, for food access and security. And so if we could just keep saying that as many times as possible, perhaps we will make them eventually look at these options of things like the Good Food Purchasing Program for metrics.
Thank you, Commissioner Prizia. Any other comments, questions? Yes, Dr. Fuentes.
So on behalf of Santa Fe, what I can share is the last 2 years have been very atypical. We've had, so first we went almost entirely remote because of the pandemic, and then we slowly started to bring back staff and students. We are hopeful that beginning this fall, we are going to see our first big group of students back on campus. But in terms of food and food procurement, what this has meant is that even a lot of our food vendors have left. In the spring semester, we were down to 2 vendors that were selling food in the area. Over the summer, it dropped down to 1. And so all of this makes it a little bit difficult. But I would encourage you and the commission to reach out to our president once again to present this idea. It might even be better to schedule a meeting. Yeah. You may suggest that I attend, and I'd be happy to be there and be another voice and be able to share some opportunities that I see in the near future.
Absolutely, Dr. Fuentes. I can really appreciate that. Dr. Brody has proven to be an amazing partner with the city and a lot of the things that we have done and are currently doing. So I could definitely be on board with helping to give him a nice little nudge there. Any other questions, comments?
Just to respond to Hannah's question. So I'm doing a research study that's separate from anything that's going on at UF, but as a faculty member at UF that works in community food systems, I'm doing a research project to gather perspectives of members of the community on what they feel is important for institutional food service procurement programs. And I think I would be happy to present once I have final results and go a little more into the methods and how I'm doing what I'm doing. And my intention is to publish the results in a peer-reviewed journal and be able to say that this is the view of the people who live in our community and what they think is important. And good food purchasing definitely is part of what came up in the research results so far.
Great. I would love
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, are we ready to move on to the Foodshed Map update?
Madam Chair, Sean Clinton again. Let me see. So I was just looking at the latest update from our Growth Management Office. Alachua County Growth Management, again, is heading up a Foodshed Map. And it's not just a Foodshed Map for Alachua County. It's some of you may have had the opportunity to see the draft map. We worked in conjunction with friends at the City of Gainesville to develop a reasonable amount of data. What turned into a reasonable amount of data turned into a embarrassment of riches of data points. So we're really pleased with that. But that was the starting point where the University of Florida GeoPlan helped to develop that into an overall architecture that we then take and we're now refining with a user interface. The user interface that we're using is the Esri Experience Builder. So we're having to learn some new skill sets in our office. That's why it's taking a little bit longer, but it will result in a better product overall. Remember that this is encompassing an area for greater than a 10-county area surrounding Alachua County. So a real food shed, a robust food shed that's capturing a lot of the opportunities in the area, not just for the producers, but also for consumers as well. So people that, that's not only your local farmer or your rancher, but someone that might need immediate food assistance. And so that requires, because you're serving that large of a market, you need to really have a tool set that's very refined. And that's the struggle that our developers right now over in Growth Management are working through. But I have some assurance that by the end of this month, we should have a working site that's up for at least testing. I won't promise the board that it'll be a final site, but we do want to be able to work through this as well as be able to come back to our friends and make sure that the data points are correct. But we've got a robust set of data out there right now that we can utilize to begin to display things and work through and make sure it's looking like it's working correct, and then make sure that we can come back and update that and keep the information relevant. Because data points that are no longer, if a farmer is no longer growing cucumbers and they switch to watermelons, then that data is not useful in the community. Mm-hmm. So we're also co-developing those means of updating information and doing it quickly.
Sean, thank you so much. This is really, really exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing the map. I know it's not going to be in its final stages, but the end of the month, how long is this? You guys have been working on this for quite some time now, haven't you?
Yes, ma'am. So quite some months now.
Yeah. So here we are looking at the home stretch, and this is really exciting, and it's going to be useful and beneficial to so many people. So thank you, staff, to all of your hard work on this. We're looking forward to the final product. Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Questions, concerns? Wonderful. Let's move right on to our Healthy Core Store update. Healthy Core Store.
It's supposed to be Corner. But
Corner.
It's a typo.
I was wondering when it was changed, but Healthy Corner Store. Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners and community members. My name's Leah Cohen, and I'm working in the Seeds office on food equity projects, specifically the Healthy Corner Store project. And we have been working on researching the feasibility of implementing a project. It's been presented to y'all a few times. Mm-hmm. We have shifted, as we've investigated further, we have shifted to an alternative that might be more aligned with the values and priorities that have been expressed by this group. That would be more of a pop-up corner store in the areas that do not have sufficient access to fresh, good food currently. So it is because of that shift that we are now investigating feasibility around the New Roots model, which also has been mentioned here before, that was implemented in Louisville, Kentucky. The director of that program had come to Gainesville many years ago to present on that model, and I've been in touch with her back and forth. about, okay, well, let's dig into the details of this now and see what might be the differences between these two communities, between the priorities of, of the communities, as well as the resources and sort of the characteristics. What does that project look like there? How might we need to adapt it here? And that is a report that we're working on putting together. And so I'd be happy to answer questions now, but we're still gathering some of those detailed information. We have a detailed budget that I'm analyzing. We have a timeline currently from Karen Moskowitz of a cycle so that we can look at, well, what does this really look like?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I do know that when this idea and initiative was rolled out, there was so much excitement about being able to work hand in hand with a lot of the different corner stores to bring certain things into their facilities. And we met with some barriers there. So I was really, really impressed with our ability to pivot and shift to, I think, a more feasible way for us to do this work in which we had a little more control. So this idea of the pop-up corner stores is something that I'm very interested in seeing how we are able to roll out. It's an interesting idea. Any questions, comments from my colleagues?
I guess my only question is, do you all have a timeline on the feasibility report coming and out? Do you know sort of what your timeline is on sort of getting through the report and the reporting feasibility stage? So, and sort of when a pilot might be on the horizon?
Yeah, I don't have a timeline specific to that. I do have a process that we have been drafting for, like, what do we need to know in order to be able to make this decision to go for it. In addition to the fact that I'm working closely with Karen Moskowitz on, all right, well, you've given me these numbers and it looks like, 33 to 43% of your program budget is going to produce. And this is the price for that produce, and this is how many shares you need to secure initially and where you're at now. And so some of those details, I just want to make sure that I'm interpreting her data correctly. And so my timeline and our timeline on being able to have something really well synthesized depends a little bit on her availability. Our next step is that we're going to have a call where I've gone through all of the details of her cash flow budget month to month and put in questions so she can answer those questions for me, so I know that I have a really solid understanding of how it's operating.
Well, I'll say I super appreciate the thoroughness and the attention to process and to involving, getting good data and involving the community as steps go on in terms of thinking about the feasibility of this project. And I really do appreciate that due diligence, so thank you. And I will also reiterate our colleague Vilma's comments that, like, people are desperate for food access. So it would be great if we did have a sense of, like, when we might be able to get a pilot so we can share that with the community, because I think there's a lot of interest in how do we get better access and how do we begin the process of affordable, healthy local food in these communities that have so little access right now. But yeah. I know you know that, and I know that you care about this as deeply as I do, so I'll shut up now.
Do you have anything to add? No. Any other questions?
Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you, Commissioner, for your comments as well. Community grocery store update. Carissa.
Hello again, Carissa Raskin, Assistant Director for Strategy Planning and Innovation. I do not have any different update since the last discussion. We are still in the period where the City Commission had requested that staff put together an unsolicited proposal process and pilot it for 6 months. We're still in that 6-month period, and that unsolicited proposal is for any unsolicited proposal, inclusive of grocery stores and any other matter. To my knowledge, to date, we haven't received any proposals for a grocery store to consider, but it would be the decision, I think, of the City Commission as to what next steps to take after the pilot period is over, which I think is October, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question about that?
You may.
So I have an update. We had a joint City-County Commission meeting, and we talked about the CRA projects and the grocery store and the food hub kept getting mentioned. I think it's worth us dedicating more time to this agenda item at a future meeting and actually having a conversation about it, because it was very clear to me that well, one, they said that they would talk about it at a future GPC meeting. The idea of actually going out for an RFP, because that unsolicited proposal process, the grocery store getting kind of lumped into that was a result of originally getting a failed unsolicited proposal. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't go forward with an actual RFP process to solicit partners with CRA funds or other funds, collaborative or otherwise, to get a grocery store on the east side of Gainesville. And a colleague, one of my colleagues at the city made a motion to do that RFP, and it was asked that we wait, or that they wait, and that they talk about it at a GPC meeting. So I would ask our city commissioner, since Commissioner Ward is gone, if we could get an update at the earliest convenience of when that's being scheduled on your General Policy Council, so the members of this committee can attend if they want to. And give input to that idea of the RFP for a grocery store, so that we can get that moving. And then second, because I think it's really clear, the data, it's clear that we need it. And then secondarily, I guess the other thing I'll say is that it was also stated that the original money that was put forward for that grocery store is no longer available. It was $3.1 million. It's been reallocated. So that money is no longer available, but there is money in the CRA budget, they said, for a food mobility hub. My understanding of that is confusing, because what I know a food hub to be is not a grocery store. It can have a grocery component. It definitely can, for sure. There are many food hubs that have a retail component, but they are much different in scope and much more broad in scope than just a grocery store. And so I would really love some clarity and understanding of what that project is meant to be, and if that is going to be the grocery store project, and it's also going to include a food hub, that is going to be a much more long-term conversation, and versus a grocery store for the east side and then a food hub with maybe a retail component. And it would not be remiss to have more than one grocery store in East Gainesville, so I'm not going to complain about both of them happening, but I want to understand that better. And so I guess I would ask that I would like to make a motion that we ask the city of Gainesville to come back with a description of what the food mobility hub is in the CRA plan, and a sort of a presentation about what that concept is and what they're thinking about, and to let us know about when the grocery store conversation is happening at the GPC.
Absolutely, and if I may interject here just a bit. From my understanding in our meetings before, it was not that there was any money that was being taken away from the creation of a grocery store. It was that the commission had a conversation, the ARPA dollars were distributed in a certain way. The conversation was that there will be money, $3 million, still that $3.1 million that will be set aside for a grocery store, whether it comes out of ARPA or another source. So that was the conversation, that wherever the money comes from, that a grocery store will be funded by the city of Gainesville with that $3 million.
Okay.
So I just wanted to kind of help with that. And
That's great.
Certainly, I do believe that we should absolutely have a presentation by staff to us to give us a little more information about the food hub idea, because that is something that I would like to learn more about as well. And certainly, I have no problem with moving forward on when we can put the grocery store item on a GPC meeting, have our conversation, and then bring it back. Not a problem.
Awesome. I guess I don't need a motion if you want to just take that back, and if
Sure.
the staff hears that food mobility hub be a future topic for this agenda, that would be great.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Any other questions, comments? Okay, let's move right along to community education update on the plant of the month. Hey, Sean.
Madam Chair, Jonathan, Alachua County again. The plant of the month is green beans.
Green beans, one of my favorites.
Thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh, no.
Plant them, cook them, eat them.
How easy are they to plant?
They're
I'm one
so
of the people-
easy to grow.
Okay, see.
Green beans are some of the easiest things to grow. They really are, because they fix their own nitrogen. They like our sandy soil. So green beans are a great crop, but you need a fair number of plants to get a decent crop.
Okay.
So but they are really simple to grow.
When can you
and they're
grow
easy
them?
to plant by seed. You plant them now. Our Plant of the Month program is designed to be like when you plant, so that we're teaching people to produce their own food as well as so it's not the harvest dates, it's the planting dates. So right about now or a little bit later, maybe even kind of really into what date are we on now? A little bit later in August, but now to late August is the time to plant your green beans, and you should get a harvest through the first frost.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
There was a rule in my house. There were always at least 2 green vegetables on the plate at dinner time. And the rule was before you got up from the table, they had to be gone. And I remember distinctly that my grandmother, sometimes there would be 3 vegetables on the plate. And when my cousins would be over at my grandmother's house, it was always a problem because unlike me, they did not like their vegetables. So I would just slide my plate underneath the table.
And they would give you their vegetables.
And that's how they were able to get up from the table and not a lot of nights. But green beans were certainly one of those vegetables that I always look forward to being on the table. So plant green beans, eat green beans. They're delicious and very good for you. So I'm glad to know they're easy to plant.
Yeah, they're easy. They
Wonderful.
grow. Yep.
Wonderful. All right, now we move on to public comment. Nancy, how are you?
I'm so happy I could make it. This is one of the most important committees we can possibly have. I'm sorry, Nancy Darren. I am so glad, am I doing this right?
Yeah, you're fine. We can hear you just fine.
Okay, I'll just do this. I'm so glad you extended this time. This is so critical at every level. Food systems are one of the core things, not just for hunger and all that. Everybody eats. Everybody is at risk. COVID and supply chain issues and war and climate have shown us that. So vital you extend. The White House, for the first time in 50 years, is holding a conference on hunger, nutrition, and health. And I think that there's I just got this, so I'm digesting it. But there would be an opportunity for this committee and your respective boards to submit a letter to make sure that they are including in the Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems Coalition and the health, other grant makers in health are making sure that we, and I'm sorry about this.
We can hear you.
It's okay.
Are making sure that we submit a letter that they consider the following recommendations as the conference develops the roadmap. Recognize and commit to alleviating poverty, the root cause of hunger, nutrition insecurity, and poor health outcomes. Commit to addressing the entire food system, socially, economically, and environmentally. The policy, we have to look at the whole thing, which is what you guys are doing, in particular policies and subsidy structures that favor certain production systems and practices, communities, and scales of operation. That commit to restructuring hunger and nutrition policy by shifting support toward community-driven, local and regional food systems. Commit to directly supporting healthcare providers and systems for preventing, not just treating, diet-related diseases. So I have I don't know who should get a copy, and I can send the link for this letter that's suggested in support of that. And then also, as another model beyond the new routes and the pop-up stuff, is a farm stop store. And I'm thinking, how do we do this quickly? How do we get a grocery store-like situation? A small farm supporting grocery store, other known as a farm stop. A farm stop is a mission-driven entity that supports small-scale farmers by sourcing agricultural products from nearby producers and operating on consignment. So there's the Argus Farm Stop in Ann Arbor, Michigan. This year-round grocery store works with over 200 local farmers and producers and gives those producers 70% of the retail price, taking a 30% commission to maintain operations. So it's a really cool model in addition, and they will train you in, will train you in this as well. So I can send all the links to you guys or whoever, however I'm supposed to do this.
Thank you very much, Ms. Darren. I believe you might be able to.
These are really incredible models throughout the country. And again, they will train you, budget, the whole thing, just like what Karen's doing. So it's another option. There's also one other, it's a permanent like farmers market farm stand in Springfield, Massachusetts, in the poorest part of the city, called Gardening the Community. And that model is really cool, and they use teenagers with bicycles to deliver food.
That's outstanding.
Yeah,
that's outstanding. Ms. Darren, if you would, I believe you could probably pass those down to Marie if you want to leave a copy here with us, and feel free to send that link out to us. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else for public comment? Anyone else for public comment? Marie, were there people that were tuned in? We're not doing that? Okay, great, no problem. Then let's come back to member comment.
Thank you very much. So I am a member, but for a moment I'd like to act as a member of the community, and I'd like to share that, well, you may all recall a few months ago, Dr. Sarah Cervone and I co-presented on a project that we received funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture called Florida Heritage Foods, Connecting Local Food to Local Culture. So I am delighted to say that we are finally ready to start rolling out some of the project outcomes on September 30th of this year, and I will be handing this out, please, to the other members of the board here. On Friday, September 30th, Santa Fe College, in partnership with Florida Organic Growers, will be hosting a symposium called Opportunities and Benefits of Heritage Foods. It will be held at the brand new Blunt Hall on University. We have a wonderful lineup of speakers so far. The keynote address will be given by Vivian Filer, the founding member and one of the board members of Gainesville's Cotton Club, who will talk about food and the role it plays in the history and culture of the African American community. Carissa Raskin has kindly agreed to be one of our presenters talking about food policy. We will have several representatives, faculty from Santa Fe and UF, explaining how they use food within the classroom to talk about culture, history, nutrition, sustainability, etc. Kelly Brew from the Farm to School program will be talking about her work. We will have representatives there from Working Foods talking about heritage foods, seed banking, and other things like that. We'll also have representatives from FOG, local farmers. We'll have local food entrepreneurs. It's just going to be I'm hoping it's going to be a really exciting group of people, rather eclectic. And of course, we'll have students from Santa Fe and UF. So please consider this to be my formal invitation. I hope all of you can come and join us for the day. The event will be hybrid. So if you can't come in person, either because you're not living in Gainesville anymore or because your schedule doesn't allow, then I invite you to join us through Zoom. If you do come in person, you will, of course, have an opportunity to see our beautiful brand new Blunt Hall, which is a pretty spectacular building. You'll have an opportunity to just interact with others in the community. And there, if you go to the website that's on this invitation, which is floridaheritagefoods.com, you will see there is a website that is currently under development, but the only thing you can see right now is it's inviting you to register for the conference or the symposium. The symposium itself is free, but if you'd like to join us for lunch, we will be featuring several locally grown heritage foods that will be created by a couple of West African women. So it's going to be West African styled Florida heritage foods. And so the only cost is actually the cost for the lunch if you're able to join us. So we're excited. This is a 3-year project, and this will help us conclude year 1.
Thank you, Dr.
Congratulations.
Fuentes.
That's
Absolutely.
exciting.
That really is. And so once again, we want to remind everybody that that's Friday, September 30th, 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at the Santa Fe College Blunt Hall. Exciting, exciting, exciting. So I have a question with regards to the next item, which is just a kind of closing out. Oh, I'm sorry, did we have another member comment?
I have one.
You do?
We passed yesterday. It's not directly related, but because so much of food is about social determinants of health, and it really comes down to all the things we've been talking about today, nutrition, access, all of those things. I think it's important to share that we passed last night to support a community health worker program in partnership with the Mobile Outreach Clinic, the Public Health Department, the Alachua County Health Department, and UF. And that community health worker program, we passed to support it with $250,000 a year for 2 years. And we will be reaching out to our cities and to UF Health to ask them to also contribute to that program. But it will be sort of a pilot program for a couple of years, which will pay in partnership with CareerSource, which is also a county program, for the training, certification, and employment of community health workers in and around Alachua County. So it's very, very exciting.
Wonderful.
And obviously nutrition, health, and food is a big part of, I'm sure, what these community health workers will be talking about when they're out and about in the community. So I just wanted to share that exciting update.
Thank you very much for that, Commissioner Perzia. As you said, that is very exciting. Any other member comment? Okay. With regards to the next meeting, I had a question, and I think it's probably best fielded by Marie and our staff. I know that I had asked, or I thought that there may be people watching. For these meetings, now that they're over here at the city, will they be broadcast? Will people have an opportunity to watch us and participate?
I don't recall if we're streaming and broadcasting. Broadcast folks would have to let us know. We're at least streaming on the website. We don't always have access to channel 12 on Wednesdays. But we're always streaming and broadcasting whatever avenues are available.
Okay, so this is being streamed over Facebook.
On our website.
On our website. Okay, being streamed on our website for people who want to take a look. I just wanted for all of us to understand, you know, when people know that we're now over here at the city, how we can tell people to tune in and to watch us. So it's through the website or come into the chamber. Okay, all right, thank you very much. Well, with that, if there are no more member comments, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to serve as your chair. That was a nice little surprise for me this morning. I will make it my business to keep our meetings tight and concise. We are at the 2-hour mark, and perhaps we can do a little, we'll be a little more efficient, do our best to be a little more efficient the next time. But thank you very much for everyone's time and your service. This meeting is adjourned.